as I said, Rodney Dangerfield he's a comedian, and his real name's Jack Roy, popularly known, of course, as Rodney Dangerfield. American stand-up comedian and actor, screenwriter, musician as well. And he died in 2004, I think. So he was born in Deer Park in New York in 1921 and died in 2004 in Los Angeles. So he has a couple of books. It's Not Easy Being Me and I Don't Get No Respect. Of course, that's his catchphrase, I don't get no respect. And he had a pretty hard life by all stories. So I think he's a very interesting man. Now, I've drawn comedians before, and they're very expressive faces. They're lovely faces. So we've got some elements here to play with in terms of construction of the face. The anatomy of the face, everybody has slightly different takes on their facial features, obviously. His would be, he's got these quite large eyes. A few of them do have that. I'll go through some of these reference pictures first of all. This is from Caddyshack. It's obviously the main problem in Caddyshack, the gopher, and one of the main characters. But this is Rover Dangerfield, plays a dog. You can see he's got the signature technique of nervously twitching or pulling his collar. Very expressive face, beautiful face. It's really alive with possibilities. And even when he's not striking these big expressions, he's quite distinctive and very, very clear. You could see all of the features and the lines there are like for maximum effect of communication of emotions. So even the line, I don't get respect, it's like he's comically asking you for respect, for inducing pathos, trying to connect with the audience. This is him in the younger years. It looks kind of looks very Hollywood to me, very 1940s. You can see the patterns on the wall, etc. This is his early stand-up career. It looks, comparatively to other comedians, he looks more, I guess, pathetic, which is, funnier, obviously. So he's got this beautiful elastic ability for this, his face. It sort of twists and turns, and the head moves beautifully on the neck. So, that's a really good, a good indication of, we can play with a lot of the shapes here. You could see this movement of the head, for a very dynamic drawing. So I think this one, or probably, this one would be a good. It's nice and clear. You could see it's quite distinctive and very iconic. So we'll work from that. Now, what I've done here is I've actually done a sketch, and from that, sorry, I'm just trying to set myself up, create a few. So I thought what we'd do is play with the, I really like that distortion, that side-on effect. I think we could play with that a lot. And I've taken this idea and expanded it a little bit more, simplified it perhaps a touch on the grey paper. So that's the thing that we're going to be working on. That's the basic underdrawing, the quick sketch, right, based on these thumbnails. So, of course, in the caricature, we're trying to find a dynamic conversation or a relationship between the elements in this area of, like, the face, which is the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. So this sort of T-zone, this mask area here, they're quite important for us to understand their relationship between each other. So whenever you start to draw one, you keep your eye on the other elements to make sure that, lines tend to lead into one another as they would normally, even though you're changing the proportions quite a lot. All right? So that's something to consider. Also, the lighting here is quite even, but it sort of gives you an idea that it's favouring the main light would be coming in from above, probably on the top right, which means that any shading that you put into the figure, into the face, is going to be pretty much contained in the lower left-hand side of the object. So if you were to simplify this even further, it would be shaded somewhat like this. So the light's coming in from the left, from the top right, and it's creating shadows on the bottom left of the form. All right. So having said that, let's proceed. Let's get into some of these interesting details. I've actually put the gopher in there as well. So the film Caddyshack, obviously, it's got some great actors in. I'll just actually go back to YouTube, sorry, not YouTube, Google, and just give you an idea. If you haven't seen the film Caddyshack, it is a great film. It's made in 1980, and Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, Ted Knight, Michael O'Keefe, Bill Murray, of course, which you saw before, and it's a really funny film in the vein of Animal House, and very, very clever, very funny. There's some really cool gags in the film itself. Look out for the floating Snicker bar in the pool. That's one good one. So let's get into some of these details. So some of the shapes, we're trying to sort of simplify a lot of this to get into the character of Rodney and expand it a little bit. But I kind of like the simplicity of these round orbs that sort of almost independently stick out from the face in many ways. So because we're working tonally, we're using a brown pencil, even though, like, for example, his eyes are blue, sort of a grey blue, but that's okay. We're working tonally. So think of these colors more as a tonal response rather than an actual color response, because you're not going to be able to get that color with this limited color palette. So just think of the tone as and you'll be fine. So with a caricature, we're moving a lot of the goalposts in the game a little bit. The position of things, their relationship to one another, is an important aspect of recognition. So we know that we need to focus. I love the little veins in the eyes. Don't you love that effect as well? So I think that's important to capture. Some of those little varicose veins. It's kind of fun. Some of these reflections in the eyeball we could play up with, make them a little bit sharper than they would be normally, just for comic effect. I think would be fine. So I'm conforming the eyelids, the muscles around the eyes, etc. Pretty much to the pattern or the shape that I've established with the simple sphere, these two spheres. So I'm using that as a guide, and hopefully that will be true to the final effect. course, this is like untamed territory. It's untamed wilderness. We're venturing here, and we're trying to create a believable effect. So recognition is important. So you have to recognize who that is, who that's supposed to be, but also be careful of the amount of tone you put in there too, because that's going to be a factor in the light and dark. That's going to be a factor in how things tend to play out, isn't it? So just lighten the pencil lines a little bit. That'll do. I think we can live with that. So the film's really good, and he plays a really good part in it. It's like this nouveau riche playboy, that has all the money to spend. He's trying to get into this golf club that has it's almost like like that film Gentleman's Agreement. So it's they don't allow riffraff into the club. And of course, he's the riffiest raff that you've ever raffed. So that's where the comic aspect of it comes in. And this is also, without doubt, it's also a bit of a teenage comedy as well. So there's a lot of teenage humor, which you'd expect, and he plays a really good, a very, very good role. And so does Chevy Chase, actually. This is quite a good film. And they make a lot out of the relationship between Bill Murray and the gopher. So the gopher is sort of the worst enemy of a golf course, if you imagine. So, it is set up for, it's nicely set up for comedy. So, getting back to the drawing, it's a matter of establishing a relationship between all of these forms, the face, the so-called master, the eyes and the nose and the mouth. So even though I'm simplifying and moving things around quite a bit, there is a tendency to, I'm putting in a lot of the detail that I'm also exaggerating the detail for sure. No question about it. It's the idea of a caricature is really to establish a fun exercise, like a really interesting dialogue of possibilities, of moving elements of the face around, probably to the point of non-recognition in a way. It's just really to entertain yourself with invention, with different possibilities of, what happens if I move the eyebrow here or make it this shape, and it's a lot of it is based, surprisingly, it's based on like a split-second first impression of shapes and their relationships and their, it's looking for the small, almost imperceptible characteristic directions of lines and elements that give you, it's like a first impression of their properties. For example, like, when you look at something, you make snap judgments, like right out of the gate, you just say, oh, he's got like a very round head or a very square head or square jaw or this sort of shape or that sort of shape. So it's really a matter of impressions. So impressions are things that are based on many, snap judgments, qualities of things. And really, there's no right way or wrong way to approach this. It's just a matter of playing with entertaining all possibilities. So it could be, it could very well be that you invent something different every time you draw a face. Certainly. I try to find something common with the faces if I draw somebody more than once. So some common factor that it needs to be there, like a feature, big nose or big eyes or whatever. And then play with looking at, try to work out a different take on the familiar. So if something strikes you as a feature, which obviously might entertain, has to be part of the dialogue of the face, has to be part of the drawing, then maybe look at other things that could also be featured in various ways, whether it be a strong feature or something you haven't thought of before. So it's important to sort of keep everything relative, even though, you have to put in eyelashes usually, unless they're completely gone, shaved off, or, they're not present. They're usually somehow should somehow be there. It's really beautiful eyes here. I'm trying to capture the curvature of his eyes, the eyelids going over the eyes, so to get a nice sort of amount of thickness of skin, which is cool to play with. Now, obviously, I'm playing with perspective here, so I'm turning some elements and twisting them back the opposite way. So there's a lot more shape here also that I'm choosing to ignore, and in favor of other elements which I'm playing with here to emphasize certain things and other things. Hair is beautifully captured by pencil, because it's like stroke for stroke, hair for hair. It's very, very cool. And you get a feeling like you're combing, in a way, these textures. So it's a nice sort of effect. It comes beautifully handy when you're drawing, animals, like cats or dogs or tigers or something like that. So shapes. A lot of this is based on impressions of things, and also obviously I'm looking at a simplification of some of the shapes. So some of the elements I'm going for exaggeration in terms of size and detail and contour, like some very particular shapes like the nose. I'm exaggerating the curvature of that. Where the ears are concerned and the jaw, the outer face, I'm simplifying something, actually doing the opposite. So the idea of caricature gives you a lot of, there's no set rules for it. There's a lot of play involved, a lot of wiggle room for individual solutions, expressions of play. So it's a fun exercise, I think. You can do caricatures of, anything. It's just a way of thinking about the subject in a different way. So you're not actually if you capture the details or it looks realistic, it's by accident, totally by accident. You just did that while you're enjoying yourself and having fun. That's basically it. Oh, there's some stray hairs here. I love stray hairs on the neck. That's kind of very dramatic. That's good. I like that. So over here we've got the curve down to the shoulder. So as with everything else, I'm kind of looking at the reference and judging whether or not how sort of detailed to make it. You know, sometimes it's best to take a lot of the detail away, because you don't, you know, sometimes I get a feeling that you know, a lot of detail outside of the main area of the focus, which is the T-zone, the face. If you put a lot of detail around the other elements, they kind of distract you a little bit. So it's always interesting to consider that possibility of using simplification, simplifying things, cutting to the chase, or just you know, using like your skill of cartoon, your interest in cartoon and symbol. You know, it's a lot of stuff thinking about, really. There's it's a very interesting process, this. So you look at the individual contours of shapes, you know, the mouth, the lips, and think about the muscles that continue to play around the face itself to create these interesting shapes and distortions. There's quite a lot of muscle here. You're talking about a comedian, physical comedian, who uses his face to express and tell the jokes, you know, express himself. So it's a lot of energies contained within this this zone, you know. It's got a lot of flexibility here. So that's really interesting, isn't it? It's very telling. Even the exaggerated pursed lips, which lips have these sort of vertical lines that wrinkle, they crease, and it's sort of a flexible ring, and it's a really like a calamari. Really nice shapes. And his lips are very, very cool, very expressive. Beautiful, beautiful face. It's a lovely set of muscles here. Incredible. You know, this I'm stylizing this quite a lot, so I'm taking a few liberties here. Hope you don't mind. It's not going to be like a normal, like a usual caricature, which is very tight on the portraiture of the character. I'm having a lot of fun with the invention of Rodney's features here. So everything you draw, you know, pay attention to where the light is. Remember, you've established already the light's coming in from the top angle here, and you know, think of the underside of these forms that if they're showing and it's correct to feature in the drawing, then do so. If not, there may be an opportunity to show the underside of a lot of these features just for dramatic emphasis. So I've done the openings of the eyes at different scales as well, which kind of give it an offset of make it sort of off kilter a little slightly. Let's continue with some of this. It's, this is like getting down to the throat area. Obviously, there's a lot of material here. You might think this is very flabby and fat, but it's not. This, believe it or not, is muscle. And again, you have to think about, what does this guy do for a living? He's a comedian, so he uses his body, uses his face. He tells jokes, right? He's, incredibly good at what he does. And consequently, this is his muscle. So whereas you'd expect a prize fighter to have very well developed arms, and legs for reflexes, dodging and attacking and defending. The same is true for Rodney, for a comedian, right? So you'd have areas of well-muscled shapes that forms that indicate what sort of activity he does. I have to be careful. Remember, always, even though it's there, it's always good to think about that direction, because once you establish something, it's sort of a relative sense of placement of elements. And even though the photograph or the reference might say, oh, well, there's another light that's coming in from another direction, if you keep everything within logical positions, then you've got the ability to create something that's cohesive. It looks correct. So sometimes the photographs can mislead you in terms of the direction of of where you're going. So always temper it with thinking about what you're drawing, not just draw slavishly to the photograph, but actually think about what it is and what shape is it. And I often compare things, apples to apples. You've heard of that saying, apples to apples, and oranges, etc. This is what I think about. So when you're drawing something that is round or pear-shaped, right? So that's interesting. But shading-wise, lighting-wise, how would you compare that face? How would you light that face or shade that face? Well, if you think of it as a pear, right, then how would you shade the pear? So some of that simplicity, that problem-solving from that simple object, you can transpose into the difficult object, right? Because in every essence, it has to apply. You have to apply the same rules to make something three-dimensional. And this is what we're tackling here. We're drawing a three-dimensional caricature, three-dimensional object. So I've simplified this little guy here. I don't think I've got reference of a gopher, but I'll try and let's put a little bit of curve in there. I think his eyes are little beady eyes and got tiny little ears, and give him big puffy cheeks. That's nice. Simplified. I don't want to go over there because again, you can overdo details, and they do tend to attract attention away from the main aspect. So I just want to put him in there because I love that film. I love the gopher. And the scenes with Bill Murray, it's like you have to watch it. You have to see it. Actually, Bill Murray's performance in Caddyshack, you've really got to see to believe. It's great seeing him and Chevy Chase, but obviously Chevy Chase and he don't really interact. It's a really funny film. Hasn't really dated that much either. I'm trying to fit this in. Yay, it fits. Yay, good. All right, so now I've established sort of a tonal drawing, and now I'm going to go into some of the details with the black pencil. So obviously you're looking at like pupils, which are usually the darkest part of the character. And you want to establish a hierarchy of dark to light. Now, just working with the forms you've established already, you can actually use pens and things to, darken obviously elements which maybe I'll do that. Start it out. So there you go. And now we've got this. It looks weird like that, but just bear with me for a second. We'll establish the hierarchy, going down to the rest of the forms, rest of the eye. So it's important now not to think of outlining so much as reinforcing what you've got underneath, what you've already established, right? By pressure, the darkest parts of the pencil, obviously, to create a sense of hierarchy, light and shade. But now I'm just helping the brown pencil. I don't want to outline things. So be very careful, very conscious of overdoing the effect, right? So you're helping the brown here. So obviously some elements you will be using a line, but in some of the subtler areas where you do need to rely on the tone rather than the outline to describe the shape and give it like the right amount of emphasis. And again, pay attention to the direction of the light source that you've already established. Actually, I'm trying to think whether or not I should put brown pencil in here. I might leave it like that for the moment. See how it plays out. Sometimes the color of the pencil line, you choose it because it's sort of reflective of flesh tones, which gives it a very warm, flesh-like texture and appearance. Some beautiful spider lines that go up from the eye, which are incredibly actually working concept. It's like a web of details that complement the main contours of the shape of the eye and the form of the eyelid. So, yeah, it's just a matter of keeping an eye on that level of detail and not thinking of outlines so much as helping with the tone that you've already established. Now, obviously I'm pinching a lot of the sizes here, the distances. I'm changing a lot of that. So the relationship, some areas are wider, some areas are narrower. The eyes are pushed together, closer together. So I've reduced the space on the top of the nose. And that's partly because of the nature of the curvature of the form that I've drawn, which employs perspective, obviously, because it's a three-quarter shot. It's not a front-on or side-on shot. And, the face that I'm drawing. So there is obviously an element of, a strong element of perspective to factor into the drawing. But also it has a very dynamic interesting variant shape as well, which is interesting to play with, I think. Okay, so I've got to remember where I am here. Even though I've changed a lot of this, actually I might just come down a touch. I might do that. Let's try to play with that. And we've got to move that line up, and then we've established the upper eyelid a little bit better than I did. Okay. Okay, so, you know, it's just a matter of now finding where those things are that you put. Where did I put that line? Where did I put that line? So remember, as I said to you before, try to think of how everything kind of connects. You know, the eyes, the lines around the eyes connect to the nose and the mouth. So all of that area, even though you're changing proportions, the relative shapes have to be true to their forms, to their nature. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Okay, so I lost a little bit of that upper lid by simplifying that shape too much. And I found that I needed that upper lid more than I thought I would. That's good. I like that. That's good. Now just help the dark area over there. Some very interesting tones coming in here, which will help with the three-dimensional properties of the eye, right? So it sort of sinks into the socket in a way. You know, everything you draw with a face, you have to keep in mind the basic anatomical structure. So eyes obviously sit in these orbits, and they're surrounded by a lattice of tissue which act as muscles. You can see those rings that outline that sit on the edge of the orbits themselves. Quite interesting. All right, so let's get back to it. Put Boris back there, and I think I'm happy with how it's going. Very stylized, as I said before, but I'm not scared of that. I think it's quite a nice. It's going to be a nice drawing. I'm going to enjoy this. I am enjoying it. I hope you guys are. I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's a fun little exercise, really, isn't it? So you're just entertaining possibilities. But again, you know, you're learning. When you draw like this, you kind of learn quite a lot about textures and anatomy and things, because you're thinking about it constantly in the process itself, you know. And drawing is a very sort of immersive activity, and it's very sort of interactive and iterative. So it's interactive in that one thing may lead to another, to another, to another, and also iterative for that very purpose as well. You keep adding. The more you add, the more things you see to add. But you know, it may not occur to you until you're actually at that particular position in time. So a lot of the interesting shapes or solutions to these little problems that you come up with may not occur to you from the outset when you first start the drawing, but certainly become a possibility, you know, as you get deeper into the drawing itself. Right? Some solutions, I'll give you an example of that. So the hair here, I'm changing some of the properties, some of the direction, and creating, even though it's got very light hair in this reference, I need a bit of shading in there to make it work. I'm changing some of the directions and some of the light and dark. So I'm simplifying as well. Not, I'm not a hair counter, so I don't have time to sort of sit down and count how many hairs. I'm just giving like an impression of hair shape in tufts rather than individual hairs. So it's hair behavior or hair quality rather than hair counts. Drawing hairy, furry. It's a matter of tempering the detail with the, the accuracy with the simplified form. Take liberty, diabolical liberties. Here we go. Goodo. So again, you come down to eyelashes and things when they're very, very pale, almost non-existent. Sort of maybe feature them, but don't make a meal out of it. Don't sort of go too far and explain them too much, And when you get down to these beautiful lines, these incredible, expressive, tiny little spider lines around the eyes, which just they're beautiful. They just show so much weather and wear and tear. It's fantastic to see this in a face because it tells a story really of the person, because it's like erosion of natural landforms in a way. You're using a sort of this is geography. This is a geography lesson. So we're drawing a man's face here, and that face tells us a lot about disappointment and success and failure and things like that. I don't get no respect. So it's a lot of activity going on in this face. A lot of things happened. And they're all reflective in these things because face, all of these wrinkles come from expressions, don't they? And the expressions are formed by emotions and thoughts. And let's try to put some of those. I don't want to overdo the eyelashes, but I'm conscious that we do need to feature them somehow because we have, keep everything even. So a lot of these features that come from a burden of thought and feeling over time. And, it's quite interesting to see that. And I found this more so with caricature than portraits because portraits you're very, very concerned with how something appears, how something looks, like to correct more or less, within reason, the reality of the subject. So the truth is in your ability to capture a sense of presence. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be more photographically real, but at the same time you're concentrating on some different aspect of the person. With a caricature, it's a little bit more interesting and in-depth in another sense. So what you're actually trying to capture is something that's indefinable in a normal portrait, I guess. Some elements of story in the face, which you kind of tend to exaggerate and focus on. So you wouldn't exaggerate or focus on features in a normal portrait. Let's get some paper here to help me lean across the I don't want to drag pigment across the paper. So I love this shape of the ear. Ears are beautiful, beautiful things. To me, there's a shell-like quality to it. Yeah, and obviously they grow for a reason, to capture sound. But as the individual gets older, of course, they take on aspects and distort for other reasons. I'm not sure about why, but obviously if you're smacked in the ear, then your ear will deform. But what about the people that have deformed ears that don't get smacked in the ear? What deforms them? So it's not some physical thing. It's something that's maybe they heard something they didn't want to hear, or maybe they heard something they want to hear. So is it like an anemone? Ears like anemones. When you see sea anemones and you poke them, they close up. So is that what happens? Who knows? Okay, so we're using the black pencil. We're just sort of helping establish the lines that we've already drawn with the brown pencil, but just sort of making them stronger and more articulate, clearer. But we're going over the lines. We're not obliterating the brown. We're not ignoring the brown. We're using the brown. So it's like in a way, we're kind of helping establish the contrast of the elements that we've already built. So we're not changing or rebuilding. We're just reinforcing. So noses can stand a certain degree of stylization or simplification in this process, because it kind of it suits their nature, I guess. There usually isn't a lot of minute details on noses. We get back to the eye here and really want to try to get nice relevant detail, relevant shape without outlining too much. So I want to try to keep it quite under the control, whatever. Okay, so that's fine. Actually, I might just, I might warm that up again, simply because of continuity. If some area of the drawing is suddenly colder in tone, in color, than the other, it doesn't sort of make a lot of sense. Even though the eyes are supposed to be green, not brown, I'm looking at the tonal qualities rather than the color qualities. Yeah, I like that. That's good. That'll do. All right, so we just keep moving down the face, just adding the relevant touches of detail without disturbing the work that you've already established with the brown pencil. The brown pencil is, arguably the most important component, because that creates the forms, the sculptural elements, and you're just really helping that sculptural quality. And when I mean sculptural, I mean the forms sort of stand out in three-dimensional space. So you look at opportunities for, let's put these frames in while we're here, I think. The extent, using the framing device around the head to create a sense of balance and negative space. So negative space works as sort of a yin-yang symbol. So the amount of negative space and positive space are balanced in the drawing, in the picture. So there's the same amount of Rodney as not Rodney. If Rodney was just floating on the page, there'd be all this space around him. It would be, just him floating on a page. It wouldn't be locked in place. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't have a sense of balance. So composition is something that many ways we kind of take for granted, but it's a unifying aspect of a picture. So we're very keenly aware of composition, of spatial indicators of balance and importance. What stands out, what's hierarchy. It's like when you take a photograph with your phone, you establish a hierarchy of what's important. So like you photograph a person, that person's in the center of frame usually, unless you want to be more inventive, and therefore is the most important person in the picture. Again, usually, but there's ways of experimenting, obviously, of with let's get some more shading in that look. Sorry, just realized yeah, make this darker with the brown. Yeah, that's all right. That's good. Okay, let's continue. So, his scenes in Caddyshack are extraordinary, and they're really iconic and stand out. I don't know whether I'm pretty sure it would have contributed to his success in stand-up as well, because people would obviously refer to it. It was incredible. It was a lovely film. Certainly a favourite. And we're getting down in some areas here. I've taken some liberties with, reducing some of the shapes and extending this roundness, which is not all there in the reference, but I kind of like it because it exaggerates some of the shape, the movement, the gesture of the head, as Rodney sort of has this sort of tendency to give you this side-on shot of his expression. Kind of makes it more dramatic, I guess. So very, very aware of his physical abilities to. There's some lines here too, because that's a tendon, isn't it? That shape, that curve. I don't have a model here to prove it to you, but just take it for granted. If you're thinking about anatomy while you're drawing here, and you suddenly find, well, why is that curve there? And you suddenly realize, oh, that's a tendon. You can feel it in your own neck when you do that sort of pose, if you incline to. So let's get some more shading down there. There's a secondary light coming in on this side, formed by this. So I don't want to go over too much because I don't want to change the main light properties. And see that pair over here? I'm putting in the shadows on this side of the pear shape. There's a bit of the secondary light casting a shadow down there, which I don't mind as long as it doesn't interfere with the main lighting. That seems to be all right. So okay, so we'll put a bit of structure there. That's a tendon. So you can see how the neck is craning to the side. It's creating this tension. So there's a lot of tension, pulling and pushing going on, not just with the face itself, but the head. As I said to you, he's a very physical actor and comedian. So you'd expect an incredible amount of flexibility and ability to push and pull these forms. So that's his stock in trade, really. Now, this gopher I've obviously simplified to the nth degree, which is fine. I don't want to make it too dramatically realistic. So just refer to a bit of fur. Okay, good. Here we go. Let's help out some of the brown outline here and there just to clarify the shape, sharpen it a little bit, not too much. So this is going to be the name ribbon, which I like. Now, I'm doing this without a ruler, so just do it lightly and then reinforce it as you go. Make a mistake, you regret it, then you have to rub it out then. That's all right. That'll do. Might just remove some of that extra erroneous pencil line underneath. That'll do. Right, now we go into a different mode. So what we're doing now is we're using a white pencil and we're going to be establishing some of the highlights. So again, as we started with the pupils when we're doing the black, right? And this time we're looking at the hot spots. What are the lightest elements in the photograph, in the reference, and why are they light? Think about, again, everything is tempered by its purpose. You know, why is that light? It's wet. It's at a certain angle where it's catching the light coming in from this direction, right? So again, this is not a shopping list of things to consider when you're drawing. You're meant to draw holistically, so to sort of consider these elements as they come up in the drawing. Wherever you are in the drawing, that's what you consider, right? Don't worry about how the light's happening in the hair until you get there. So try to hyper focus in the areas that you're working in, right? Again, snap back and forth from the big picture down to the little picture and then back again. So that's quite important. You've seen pictures of artists working on canvas where they sort of step back to get a perspective. So that just means they're working on the closer little tiny details of something, but then they need to snap back and look at the overall effect of the piece. Well, that's the same thing for anything you're working on. Especially caricatures. So you've got to, as I said, think of its relative effect. So you're not colouring in with this. This is not a colouring in exercise. This is a matter of establishing hierarchy. So you've kind of established it already, but now you're dramatically enhancing some of those properties which you're alluding to in the drawing. just actually keep the eyeball a bit darker over there, so I can establish a bit of a highlight coming in from the opposite direction. That'll do. Might just fix that as well. I'm going to come in here with a pen in a second, kick up some of those highlights a little bit stronger than I have there. Again, you know, pay attention to, don't color in, it's a matter of establishing highlights, not destroying the tone that you've established. The range of light and dark needs lighter elements to balance against the darker elements. And you don't want to sort of muck around with the changing the tone, the mid-tones that you've already established. So a lot of that is, you have to sort of temper it, don't you? You sort of create a roundness around the head, the forehead, without colouring in the whole thing. So use the paper. The paper's meeting you. It's there, designed there to meet you halfway. So 50% of the tone is already established there. All you need to do is work on the top 25% and the bottom 25%, because 50% is already there. So it's kind of a lovely, invigorating process of sculpting out of the grey, you know, to create a beautiful sense of three-dimensional form. You could do this with anything. It doesn't have to be caricature. Of course, the drawing process itself, this is really intended for a lot of it, I guess. It's very useful for drawing figures, life drawing or something. Very useful for that. You know, but not exclusively. Use it for anything that you need to, or feel you need to, describe in a three-dimensional fashion. So drawing is a very natural thing that we all have an ability to draw. We all grow up with that ability. Well, we don't keep it as adults, but a lot of us, but as children we use it, and we tell stories with our drawings. So it's not, you know, it's a much more narrative process. And I guess the more as we grow older, we kind of analyze our work, our drawings, in a sort of disfavorable light. You know, doesn't look what it's supposed to look like, doesn't look realistic, or I can't draw, and then you give up. And you shouldn't, because, you know, there is a point where you draw and you build on it. So every time you draw something, you're actually learning a lot about the properties of the subject you're drawing, but drawing in general, you know, like a lot of this this stuff that I'm doing is part of the muscle memory or muscle language. You know, you think of it like this. You know, when you're driving your car, you go from A to B. You're not constantly aware of each light that you stop at. Hopefully you stop at, but you're not immediately aware of it, because it's relegated to a different part of the brain, which sort of takes over. You know, does a lot of the repetitive tasks. So there is a lot of repetitive elements to drawing itself. You know, no question. There's a certain amount of it's not all excitement, but you know, it's important to formulate a plan like you would be driving a car. Same way of, same thing. Driving a car, drawing Rodney Dangerfield. Same thing. Same thing. You're relegating a lot of the drawing to a part of the brain which sort of remembers pressure and direction and things like that, and concentrating on some aspects that you're yet to discover or create relationships with. I love contrasts, light against dark and things. Whenever I see like an opportunity to do that, like this, just under the nose here on the other side of the cheek, the underside of the form of the cheek that's coming over has caught a bit of light, and I can see it and feel it, and it feels right to draw it. So it's quite interesting. So there's a lot of muscles going around here. It's very easy to make assumptions that this is soft tissue, and think that he's very fat. Well, he is. He does have fat, but you're talking about muscle here. This is a face. Remember, the face is this guy's face is used as a tool for expression, and that you cannot deny that gift or that ability, that craft that he's been able to create. Oh, I love that thing too. I'm going to enhance that with a white brush too. Some of that effect over here. So that tendon that I found, it's not so so strongly featured in the photograph, but I know it's there. I can feel it. I can feel the tension built up by that tendon. That it's like pulling on a bow string, and that's what that's like. You can feel that tension build. It could snap back at any second. It's really cool. It's lovely to think of these forces at play, when you're drawing a face. There's a lot of things here at stake, right? It's not just the recognition of who you're drawing. It's thinking about all this stuff that goes into the structure of the face. It's really a lot of fun. Okay, so just help his little punam out here, the little gopher. He's got lighter cheeks. I'm just simplifying. I don't need to look at the reference so much. That'll do. Now, let's try to help some more contrast with this. I'm going to get in here. This is a white Posca marker, so it's an acrylic marker, and it's quite opaque and will help with the contrasts that I'm establishing with the forms. So, for example, to put a side light coming in on this side, right? So remember, I'm not dissing the main light. I'm now creating another light. So, within reason, you don't want to go overboard and put in too many lights, but occasionally it makes sense to think of how things are reflecting more than the one source, more than the one light source. So again, don't colour in, just you know, think of the possibilities of creating a beautiful dialogue of texture, light and shade. So there's a few light hairs in there we can play with. And again over on this side too. Put in the side light that we're talking about on the nose. Oop, came in too close to that contour. I'll have to fix that. Again, some nice shiny bits there. So the shine you can see better when they're not long strands, but you know, they just reflect they just hit some part of the hair. That'll do. What else? Get down here, maybe. Yep. Help out these glossy lips. Put a bit more shine there. Ears are interesting, aren't they? Because they're quite glossy in parts and matte in others. Okay, so I think we're going all right with this. I'm going to put in this side light to match the side light on the nose, but I'm not going down the whole figure, the whole face. Just want to sort of help out here and there. Again, you know, that'll do. And then down here maybe a bit. Didn't see it pop out a little bit more. Not going too far. Yeah, that's good. Have I forgotten something? Because of the roundness of the eyelid, I forgot a highlight there. Yeah, I might just actually, because I've done a highlight on that one, I might just put it there too. Seems to work all right. So I'll continue with this is another Posca marker. This time it's a brush, which means you can go thick and thin, and it will just help to feather out some of these shapes so they don't look so angular. Yeah, that'll do. Fine. Okay, we're nearly there. I think what I'll do with the let's have a look at another brush pen. No, I don't get that one. Let's get a simpler one. I have all these different brush pens. This is a Zig flexible brush pen. The ink is in the handle, and I'm just going to help out some of these contours a little bit to make them a bit chunkier. And the darker parts, like obviously the pupils, maybe. Again, brush pens can go thick and thin, but you want to keep down, don't outline things because you've already established a contrasting hierarchy, which is good. So always try to keep the roundness of the pupils left and right the same. Yeah, that'll do. All right. So what I'm doing here is that all of the elements that are like I can really outline So the outer contours of the features of the face, I can sort of make more contrasty, thicker, stand out a little bit better from the background. Yeah, there you go. Not too shabby. So there's a lovely thick and thin quality that you're establishing with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the background darker. This negative space I'm going to colour in with a black pen. If I can find one that works. Is that no, that's not one. It's a Uniball. I got a thick marker, but I want to get into some of these little areas here, so I'm going to change over to another marker, a black marker, which is a bit thinner. I can do the cutting in here. So that's going to be nice. Now these markers dry quite flat. Now you can see here I'm staying away from the actual line that I've drawn. Just giving a little bit of a gap. Because I don't want to sort of fill it in. I want it to be still visible even when I draw in the black sky, the black background. So this is they're acrylic markers. I guess they're probably graffiti style markers. So the main idea is to, I've done this a lot for my illustrations in watercolor or whatever. It's just something that I tend to do a lot because I'm always concerned about losing the line work, after establishing. It's a lot of drawing and you don't want to lose the line by painting it out, painting over the top. So I tend to leave a little bit of a space in between the colour or the background and the actual shape itself. It's sort of like a double exposure of that line in a way that reinforces its dominance in the illustration, in the drawing. It gets a bit dicey when you get into these little spider line zones, isn't it? It's what's more important. So yeah, you're a bit dicey here. Give and take. There we go. That'll do. That looks fine. Okay, so the cutting in I'm doing in with a smaller marker, and then I'll fill it in and be a bit faster with a thicker one. So we'll get into that in a second. Might actually, I like seeing the organic wiggliness of this edge here. Oh, it's a bit of a fuzz. It's picked up some of the paper. Okay, so just more of the same, the rest of it. Cut it in. Yeah. Echo the line. And just fill. I do this, I don't do this for oil painting actually. I don't think I've ever done that for oil painting. But for watercolor it works a treat. And the double thing with watercolor, of course, you don't want watercolor to blend, wet into wet runs into each other to create unexpected color changes and things. So you want to be aware of that and give it a bit of space. And this technique does that very well. So it's a beautiful. I find it anyway a beautiful sort of technique. Part of a style, I guess you'd call it. A style is just an individual use of the technique. So here we go. Here we go down to the end. Now we've got a big chunky marker, and we're going to be colouring in the rest. That's good. Yeah, cool. How much space I'm covering with this. Haha. And you know the beauty about this is, like, unlike Indian ink, which this sort of material replaces a lot of the time, it doesn't dry patchy. It dries very flat and even. As I said, they're paint pens. And the beauty of it is, guess what? It doesn't go through the paper, which is great. It's like the blackness of a texture that doesn't absorb through the paper itself, which is fantastic. Yay! Oh, what's happened there? Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, that'll do. All right. I love this. This is a lot of fun. This is so much fun. So much fun. So let's finish little Rodney off here. We'll put his name here. R-O-D. I have to spell it out, otherwise I forget it. N-E-Y. D-A-N-G-E-R-F. Not quite Mickey Mouse Club. And there you go. This is Rodney Dangerfield. Let's have a look at the before and compare. Compare notes. This is Rodney Dangerfield. I get no respect. I don't get respect. I get no respect. And this is my version of Rodney Dangerfield. And do yourself a favor and go and watch Caddyshack. You'll enjoy it, especially the pool scene with the Snickers bar. I think you know what I'm talking about. Very good, very funny. And this is Frantz Kantor saying, I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.